The Warrior in Chains. The palace of the Zalari Empire stood high above the burning skies of the conquered planet, its golden towers glowing with cruel beauty. In the deepest dungeon of that palace sat a single human warrior, chained by glowing energy cuffs, silent and still like a shadow. His name was Captain Rylan, a soldier of Earth's defense fleet. Captured during the final battle of the Rim War, the alien guards expected him to cry, to scream, to beg for mercy, but he did none of that. He just sat there with calm eyes and a faint smile, a strange peace that made everyone uneasy. The Empress herself came down to see this creature from the death world. She had seen humans fight, had seen their ships burn, yet this one refused to bow. Amused, she turned to her royal guard commander, a tall, silver-skinned female named Lysera. "Amuse yourself," the Empress said with a cold grin. "See if the beast can be broken." Lysera bowed and walked closer to the human cell, her tail swaying with pride. When she looked at him through the energy bars, she expected fear, but his eyes were steady, watching her like a storm behind glass. "You're not afraid," she said softly. Her voice half mocking, half curious. Rylan smiled again, calm and quiet. "Should I be?" he asked. That simple question made her chest tighten. Though she didn't understand why, the next day she returned, this time with 2 guards and a smirk on her face. She brought food, strange alien fruits that glowed faintly in the dark cell. "I heard humans need strength to fight. Perhaps this will help," she teased, tossing the plate before him. Rylan didn't move, didn't even blink. He just looked at the food, then back at her. "Keep your gifts," he said. "I've eaten worse on Earth." The guards laughed. But Lysera felt a chill. That strange calm was unsettling. Days passed and Lysera kept visiting. Sometimes she teased him, calling him pet or death world beast. Sometimes she tried to make him angry, but he never reacted even when she pressed close to the bars, close enough that her breath touched his face. He only smiled, that same quiet smile, not cruel, not mocking, just powerful. It made her heart beat faster every time, though she tried to hide it behind her proud mask. One evening, she found him standing instead of sitting. His chains rattled softly as he stretched, his body covered in faint scars. "What are you thinking, human?" she asked, her voice softer than usual. "I'm thinking," he said, "how fragile this palace feels." Lysera frowned. "Fragile? This is the heart of the Zalari Empire." Rylan tilted his head, his eyes glinting under the dim light. "Everything breaks if you push it the right way," he said for the first time. Lysera didn't have a clever answer. Later that night, she watched him through the monitor. He was still, eyes closed, as if meditating. Her hand trembled slightly on the control panel. Why did he look so calm, so sure, even in chains? She told herself it was annoyance, not fear, but deep down, she felt something strange. Respect, maybe even admiration. When she returned the next day, Rylan spoke first. "You don't belong here," he said quietly. "You're too kind for this place," she laughed, trying to hide the sudden warmth in her chest. "I am a royal guard of the Empress," she said proudly. "I was born for this." Rylan only smiled again. That same calm, knowing smile. "Even a star can burn out," he said, "especially when it shines too close to darkness." Lysera stepped back, her breath caught in her throat. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not even the Empress herself. That night she couldn't sleep. The human's words echoed in her mind. Why did she care what a prisoner thought? Why did that calm smile haunt her dreams? She remembered the way his voice sounded, gentle yet powerful, the kind of voice that could silence storms the next morning. She looked in the mirror and saw something she didn't expect. Hesitation. For the first time in her proud military life, she doubted her own strength. Meanwhile, deep within his cell, Rylan's smile faded, replaced by quiet resolve. He had seen the cracks in their armor, not in their weapons, but in their pride, and he knew when the time came, the galaxy would tremble again before the will of Earth. But for now he waited, calm and silent, because patience, he knew, was the sharpest weapon a human could ever wield. The game of power, the next sunrise over the alien capital, burned like molten gold. But inside the palace the air felt colder, heavier. Lysera walked through the corridor with her usual proud steps. Yet her heart carried a quiet storm. Every guard she passed bowed their head, unaware that their commander's mind was trapped by thoughts of a single human. She told herself it was duty, curiosity, nothing more. But deep inside she knew she was lying. When she entered the cell again, Rylan was already awake. His eyes watching the glow of the energy cuffs, he looked up at her and smiled. That same calm smile that tore through her pride like a blade of light. "You look tired," he said gently, and that voice made her chest tighten again. "I'm not tired," she replied sharply. "I just came to remind you that you're still my prisoner." Rylan tilted his head, his expression peaceful. "Then why do you visit every sunrise?" he asked. The words hit her like a pulse from a plasma blast. Yet she forced a laugh. "Because I like watching your spirit break slowly," she said, though even she didn't believe it. That day, she brought him a table of puzzles used for interrogation. Each holographic pattern could attack the mind of weaker beings. Bending their thoughts, she activated it and crossed her arms. "Let's see how long your human brain lasts," she said. Rylan looked at the glowing maze and then at her. "You think fear can break me?" he asked softly. Without waiting, he placed his hand inside the beam, the light twisting around his skin. His jaw tightened, his breath slowed. But he didn't scream. He didn't even move. When the machine overloaded and died, smoke rising from its circuits, he was still standing, calm as ever. Lysera's mouth opened slightly. She had never seen anyone resist that power. "How?" she whispered, but Rylan only smiled. "Pain is easy," he said. "Living through it is what humans do best." There, when she reported to the Empress, she was asked if the human had spoken. Lysera lied, saying he was weak, broken, and near collapse. But the truth was that she could not bear the idea of anyone else speaking to him. The Empress laughed, calling humans amusing little creatures, and dismissed her. Lysera left the throne room with shaking hands, her heart thundering with emotions she couldn't name. That night she returned again, but without her guards. Rylan was sitting in silence, watching the stars through the narrow window slit. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, her tone softer than she intended. "I'm thinking about your stars," he said. "How they look just like ours, only colder." Lysera frowned. "You talk like you've been here before." Rylan smiled faintly. "Maybe not here, but I've seen empires rise and fall. And they all start with the same mistake. They forget fear." His words sank deep into her heart like frost spreading through water. She wanted to answer, to argue, but she could not. Because she felt it too. That fear, that truth. The next day, she ordered the guards to test his strength. 3 soldiers entered the cell with energy spears, mocking him as they approached. Rylan didn't move, didn't fight back, until one of them struck him across the face. In a flash, he caught the weapon mid-air, the spear cracking like glass in his grip. For a moment, time froze. His eyes glowed faintly, not with rage, but with controlled power. He handed the broken spear back to the guard and said calmly, "You should hold it tighter next time." The guard stepped back, trembling, and Lysera had to call them off before they panicked. When the door closed, she stared at him in silence, her breath uneven. "You could have killed them," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "I could," Rylan replied, "but then I'd be what you think I am." That night, she couldn't escape his voice in her head. The human was supposed to be her captive, her plaything, but she was the one losing control. She replayed his words, his calm eyes, his quiet strength, and realized something that terrified her. He wasn't resisting her power. He was teaching her what real power meant, the kind that needed no weapon, no chains, no command. In the following days, she found herself bringing him books, stories, even music recordings. She claimed it was to study human psychology. But her heart knew the truth. She wanted to understand him, to understand why that calm smile made her heart race like a battlefield drum. Rylan accepted each gift with quiet gratitude, never boasting, never asking for more. He spoke about earth and about rain, mountains, and laughter. His words painted colors she had never seen, sounds she had never heard, and each time she left, she felt the palace around her growing smaller, darker, as if the world she knew was starting to crumble beneath that quiet human's presence. One evening, as she prepared to leave his cell, Rylan said softly, "Be careful, Lysera." She froze, her name on his lips sounding strangely human, strangely warm. "The Empress watches everyone," he continued, "and she won't like what she sees growing in your eyes." Her heart stopped for a moment, then beat faster than ever. She turned away quickly, pretending his words meant nothing. But as she walked out, her hands trembled. For the first time in her life, the great warrior Lysera realized she was afraid, not of him, but of what she was becoming because of him. the eyes of a death worlder. The palace was restless that night. Shadows moved along the silver corridors and whispers filled the halls like wind in a storm. The rebellion that had been brewing on the outer colonies was now reaching the capital. Reports came in of explosions, of guards turning against the Empress, of chaos spreading like fire. But deep in the lowest cell, Captain Ryland sat quietly, his eyes closed. As if none of it mattered, Lysera stormed in, her armor glimmering in the pale blue light. "You did this, didn't you?" she snapped, pointing her plasma spear at him. Ryland opened his eyes slowly, that same calm shining in them. "If I had, you'd already know," he said softly. His voice was calm, but it carried something heavy, something ancient. Lysera hesitated, then lowered her weapon slightly. "What are you?" she whispered. "You're not like the others I've seen on the battlefield." Ryland stood up, his chains rattling softly, his height casting a shadow over her. "I'm human," he said. "That's all." But his eyes told a different story. Eyes that held storms, oceans, and something wild and free. Lysera stepped closer without realizing it. Those eyes pulled her in like gravity. She saw flashes inside them. A world with red skies, forests filled with beasts, lightning that struck without mercy, and men and women who stood against it all, smiling through the pain, surviving where no other species could. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once. When she blinked, the vision vanished, and she stumbled back, gasping for air. Ryland's voice was soft again. "Now you see why the galaxy fears us." Lysera pressed a hand to her chest, her heart racing like she had seen the birth of a star. "You call your home a death world," she whispered, "but it's alive, it's wild." Ryland nodded. "That's what makes us strong. We learn to love the things that try to kill us." His words hit her like thunder, echoing in her bones. The alarms blared through the palace. The sound of energy cannons shook the walls. The rebellion had reached the main gates, and the Empress ordered all guards to prepare for battle. Lysera hesitated, looking between Ryland and the door. Her mind screamed to leave, but her heart whispered something else. "Stay," Ryland said quietly. "If you go now, you'll die." "How do you know that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Because I've seen fear like this before," he said. "It makes people blind." A crash echoed above them, dust falling from the ceiling as the lights flickered. The guards outside shouted, but then there was silence, a silence so heavy it made Lysera's skin crawl. Then she heard it, footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming closer to the cell door. A monstrous alien stepped in, its armor soaked in dark fluid, its eyes glowing red. A rebel warlord from the Outer Rim, known for killing thousands in the Empress's name before turning against her. He grinned, his fangs sharp. "So this is the human I've heard about," he growled. "The Death World toy." Before Lysera could react, the warlord lunged forward, grabbing her by the throat. She struggled, gasping, her spear falling to the floor. Ryland's chains tightened as he pulled against them, the metal glowing hot. "Let her go," he said, his voice low and deadly calm. The warlord laughed. "And what will you do, little human? Bite me?" Then it happened. Ryland's eyes flashed, not with anger, but with something older, deeper. The lights in the cell dimmed. The air itself seemed to bend, and with a sound like cracking stone, his energy cuffs shattered, glowing fragments falling like sparks. He stepped forward, every movement slow and controlled. The warlord turned, swinging his weapon, but Ryland caught it mid-air with one hand. The energy blade flickered, then died, crushed between human fingers. Ryland looked him in the eyes, and for a heartbeat, the warlord froze. Because in those human eyes, he saw death itself. Not hate, not rage, but perfect stillness. Then, with one motion, Ryland struck him down, the alien collapsing like broken armor. Lysera stumbled back, staring at Ryland in disbelief. "You're free," she whispered. "You broke energy cuffs with your hands." Ryland turned to her, his eyes calm again. They weren't made for something that survived Earth, he said. She tried to speak, but no words came. Her voice was lost somewhere between awe and fear. Rylan stepped closer and gently lifted her chin, forcing her to look at him. Now you know, he said, what a Deathworlder really is. His touch was gentle, but his presence felt like standing on the edge of a volcano. Her knees trembled, not from weakness, but from something else. A strange pull she couldn't resist. The alarms outside grew louder again, but in that small cell, time felt frozen. Rylan looked at the stars through the broken wall, his eyes distant. We never wanted war, he said softly, but you brought it to our sky, and now it's coming back to yours. Lysera followed his gaze. Her heart pounding, she finally understood. Humanity wasn't dangerous because of weapons or ships. They were dangerous because nothing in the galaxy could break their will. And as Rylan stood in that shattered cell, his calm smile returning once more, Lysera felt the truth settle deep in her soul. She had tried to tease the human, to control him, but now she was the one trembling, caught in the gravity of a Deathworlder's eyes, the forbidden whisper. The palace burned in the distance, its towers cracking under the pressure of rebellion and betrayal. Smoke drifted through the corridors like ghosts, filling the air with the scent of fire and fear. Lysera moved through the shadows beside Rylan, her once polished armor now covered in ash. The alarms screamed across the halls, and soldiers ran past them without even noticing, too blinded by chaos. Rylan walked calmly, every step steady, his eyes sharp, as if he had walked through worse storms before. Where are we going? Lysera whispered, clutching her weapon tightly. Up, he said simply, to the landing bays. She frowned. You plan to escape? The Empress will never allow. She already lost, he interrupted, his voice soft but unshakable. Lysera turned to him, confused. You sound so sure. Rylan looked at her, that quiet smile forming again. Because I've seen empires fall before they realize they're dying. They reached a long hallway lined with glowing statues of Zalari heroes. Lysera slowed down, her eyes landing on one statue, a figure that looked almost like her, the first female guard of the royal line. My ancestor, she murmured. She served the first empress. Rylan stopped beside her. And what did it cost her? He asked. Lysera hesitated. Her life, she said quietly. She died protecting a throne that forgot her name. Rylan nodded. Then don't repeat her story. Those words struck deeper than she expected, echoing in her heart like thunder through stone. They continued forward until they reached a sealed chamber. Inside, blue light shimmered over an ancient device, a stasis pod filled with strange symbols. Lysera gasped. This is the Chamber of Origin, she whispered. Only the Empress and high scholars are allowed here. Rylan stepped closer, brushing the dust off the control panel. Your people found this on a human colony long ago, he said, his voice calm but cold. Her eyes widened. That's impossible, she said. The Zalari Empire never conquered Earth. Rylan turned to her, his expression unreadable. You didn't need to. You took what was left behind. He pressed a button and the hologram above the pod flickered to life. It showed ancient humans, explorers standing among alien ruins, their faces filled with curiosity and courage. Lysera's breath caught in her throat. Your kind was here, before the Empire? Rylan nodded. Long before humans reached the stars, when your ancestors still hid in caves. He looked at her, his eyes burning softly like twin suns. And when we vanished, you found our tools, our weapons, our seeds of knowledge. Her hands shook. Then the Empress, she built her empire on human ruins. Rylan smiled sadly. Every empire does. Lysera stepped back, her mind spinning. Everything she had believed, the glory of the Zalari, the pride of her race, now cracked like broken glass. Why are you showing me this? She asked, her voice trembling. Because you need to see who you're serving, Rylan said, and what you've become. She stared at him, her chest heavy. And what about you, Rylan? What are you becoming? He looked away, his voice turning softer. A reminder. She frowned. Of what? He turned back to her, his eyes meeting hers. That humanity doesn't forget. We forgive, but we never forget. Suddenly the room shook violently, the sound of plasma fire cutting through the walls. The Empress's elite guards stormed in, their armor gleaming crimson, their weapons charged. Ryland stepped forward calmly, placing himself between Lysera and the soldiers. Capture them both, one shouted. The traitor and her pet human. Ryland's eyes narrowed slightly. Pet? He murmured. Before anyone could move, he vanished. Or maybe it was too fast for their eyes to follow. The next instant, the guards were on the ground, their weapons melted, the air thick with static. Lysera stood frozen, watching the smoke drift around him. He turned to her. We need to leave now, he said calmly. She nodded, but her mind screamed. How could something so calm be so terrifying? As they reached the outer corridor, the wind from the shattered dome howled like a wounded beast. The sky burned orange and ships battled in the distance, lightning from human warships splitting the heavens. Lysera stopped for a moment, staring at the chaos. Your people are here, she said softly. Aren't they? Ryland looked up, his expression unreadable. They always come when we're needed. He turned to her, his eyes softer now. But not everyone deserves saving. Lysera's heart twisted at those words. You think I don't? She asked quietly. He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. There's still good in you, Lysera, that's why you hesitate. That's why you tremble. She stared at him, her breath shaking. What are you doing to me? She whispered. Ryland smiled faintly. Nothing, he said. I'm just reminding you what you already are. The sound of engines roared overhead, and the floor shook beneath their feet. Ryland reached out and took her hand. His touch warm, steady, human. Come with me, he said. Leave this empire behind. Her eyes widened, her voice almost breaking. If I do, I'll be hunted forever. He nodded. Then you'll finally know what it means to live free. She hesitated, torn between duty and something deeper, something she couldn't name outside. The sky lit up with the fire of a new dawn, the dawn of humanity's return. And as Ryland pulled her toward the escape bay, he whispered words that would haunt her forever. Your Empress thinks humans are dangerous because we fight, he said, his breath close to her ear. She's wrong, he added softly. We're dangerous because we love. Lysera's heart stopped for a single beat. In that whisper, she heard both warning and promise. And as the door closed behind them, sealing their fate, she realized she had crossed a line that no alien had ever crossed before. She had fallen into the gravity of a Deathworlder's heart, and there was no way back. The escape. The thunder of engines rolled through the palace as the human fleet broke through the upper atmosphere. Columns of blue flame cut the dark sky, and every alien sensor filled with panic signals. Inside the collapsing corridors, Ryland and Lysera ran through clouds of dust and sparks. The marble floor cracked under their boots, and the light of burning ships painted the walls red. Lysera's breathing was ragged, her heart pounding like a war drum. She had never run from a fight before, but this was different. This was survival mixed with guilt and hope. Ryland moved ahead, silent and steady, guiding her like someone who already knew every turn. How do you know the way? She gasped. He smiled faintly. I studied the palace while I waited in chains. She stared at him in disbelief. You planned this all along. Not the fire, he said. Just the path. A sudden blast tore through the wall behind them. Throwing Lysera to the ground, Ryland turned instantly, lifting a broken door panel as a shield. Fragments of plasma hit and melted against it. But he didn't flinch. He reached down, pulled her up, and without thinking, she grabbed his arm. His skin felt warm, alive, and strong. Don't let go, he said quietly. Not now. She nodded, unable to speak. They reached the grand hangar. Hundreds of fighters half destroyed, smoke rising in waves. Dozens of Zilari soldiers stood between them and the exit. At their center was Commander Varrock, Lysera's mentor, his armor scarred, his eyes cold. Lysera, he shouted, step away from that human. The Empress commands your arrest, she froze. Every memory of loyalty screaming in her head. Rylan stepped forward, calm as ever. She doesn't belong to anyone, he said. Varric raised his blade. Then she dies with you. The air rippled as energy blades ignited. Rylan looked at Lysra once, his eyes asking a question without words. She answered by lifting her spear and standing beside him. Varric's face twisted in disbelief. You choose the Death Worlder? Lysra's voice shook but did not break. I choose truth. The fight exploded like thunder. Varric's soldiers rushed in, but Rylan moved faster. His body a blur of precision and purpose, he disarmed one, spun, and used the same weapon to knock two more aside. Lysra fought beside him, her movements elegant but fierce. For every strike she made, he was there, covering her blind side. Their rhythm was perfect, human instinct and alien discipline weaving into one flow. Varric lunged forward, his sword glowing crimson. Rylan caught it with his bare hand, the energy burning his skin. He pulled Varric close and whispered, Earth teaches pain differently. Then he twisted, disarming the commander and sending him crashing to the ground. Lysra stepped back, trembling, staring at the smoke around them. The floor was littered with defeated soldiers, their weapons scattered like fallen stars. Rylan turned toward the docking bay doors. Through the open sky, they could see massive human dreadnoughts descending, each one bigger than the palace itself. Engines roaring with blue fire. Lysra had never seen such power. Yet it wasn't chaos, it was precise, controlled, disciplined. Your people are monsters, she whispered, but there was no hate in her tone. Only awe. Rylan looked at her, his voice low. No, we're survivors. They reached a small transport ship. Half buried under debris, Rylan pulled open the hatch, then offered her his hand. Once we leave. You can't go back, he said. Lysra hesitated, staring at the burning palace that had been her home. She saw memories, her training, her pride, her oath, and then she saw Rylan, standing there waiting. Her heart made the choice her mind could not. She took his hand. Then I won't, the engines roared to life, the ship shaking as it lifted through the smoke. Below them, the capital city burned, its towers falling like candles in the wind above. The human fleet formed a silent wall of light, protecting the evacuation routes. Are they saving us or conquering us? Lysra asked softly. Rylan looked out at the stars. Sometimes it's the same thing. As they broke through the upper clouds, the sunlight hit the cockpit. For a moment, everything was gold, in the sky, the fire, even her tears. Lysra turned to him. What happens now? Rylan didn't answer immediately. He just looked at the endless horizon. Now, he said finally, we find out what comes after fear. The ship vanished into the vastness, leaving behind a world that would never be the same. Below, the Empress watched from her crumbling tower, fury in her eyes, but somewhere deep within that fury, a spark of dread began to grow, because she had seen what no ruler ever wanted to see. A human walking free, smiling calmly and changing the fate of empires. The Empress's wrath. The sky above the capital was filled with streaks of fire, the last breaths of a dying empire. Human ships hung in the upper atmosphere like silent judges, their weapons still and waiting. But deep inside the remains of her palace, the Empress of Zilari was very much alive. She stood before the great mirror throne, her golden robes torn, her crown cracked, her eyes burning with fury. Find them, she hissed to her generals. Find the traitor and the human beast. Her voice echoed through the broken halls, filled with venom and disbelief. How could one Deathworlder cause such ruin, she whispered. How could one calm smile unmake centuries of power? None of her advisors dared to answer. They just bowed and fled. Behind her, the giant banners of her rule burned slowly, curling into ash far above the city. Lysra and Rylan floated in silence within their small transport ship. The damage alarms blinked, but neither of them moved. Lysra looked down through the viewport at the burning world below, her eyes heavy with sorrow. Everything I believed in is gone, she said. Rylan turned to her, his voice gentle. Then it's time to build something new. She met his gaze, that same calm, steady gaze, and felt her heart tremble again. How do you stay so calm? She asked softly. When everything is chaos, Rylan smiled faintly. Because chaos is home to us, we learned peace inside storms. Suddenly, the radar flashed, crimson signals filling the screen, dozens of Zilari warships rising from hidden bases beneath the surface. They're regrouping, Lysra said, panic creeping into her voice. Rylan's eyes narrowed. She's not finished yet. A moment later, A broadcast cut through every channel, the face of the Empress filling the air. Her voice was cold and sharp like glass. To the humans who think themselves gods, this is my answer. She raised her hand, and somewhere on the planet a pulse beacon ignited. Massive energy cannons hidden beneath the crust powered up. Targeting the human fleet above, the sky lit up. Beams of violet light cutting upward, tearing through clouds. One human cruiser took a direct hit and vanished in a blaze of white fire. Lysera gasped. "She'll destroy your fleet." Ryland's voice was calm but low. "No, she'll destroy herself trying." He activated the ship's comm. "This is Captain Ryland of Earth's 7th Expeditionary Fleet. Execute contingency Delta Red." "Confirmed," came a voice from the flagship. Cold and controlled, within moments the human formation shifted. Their ships began to move in perfect synchronization, like a single living being. Blue shields unfolded like wings of light, absorbing each blast, redirecting the energy into the void. On the palace balcony, the Empress screamed in disbelief. Her own energy beams turned against her, lighting up the city she once ruled. She watched her soldiers melt under the heat, her towers collapse in flame. Yet even as destruction claimed everything, she stood tall, whispering, "I am the Empire." Ryland's voice came through her broken comms, quiet but clear. "No," he said. "You're its echo." Lysera watched as the Empress's palace cracked in two. "Will she die?" she asked, her tone almost sad. Ryland shook his head. "Power doesn't die easily, it hides until someone believes in it again." She looked down at her hands, trembling. "And what about me? What am I now?" Ryland studied her for a long moment, then said softly, "Free." The word hung in the air like sunlight breaking through dust, but freedom was not peace. As they entered orbit, the sensors detected a massive signature from the surface. The Empress had activated her final weapon, the heart of the Empire, a living energy core designed to erase everything within 1,000 kilometers. Lysera's eyes widened. "She'll destroy the planet." Ryland nodded slowly. She'd rather burn her world than admit defeat. He turned toward the controls, his voice steady. "We can't stop her from dying, but we can save whoever's left." He transmitted orders to the fleet, directing evacuation dropships across the colonies. Even as the explosion began, human ships moved in precise formation. They shielded cities, pulled survivors from the rubble, carried thousands into orbit. Lysera stared in awe. "You saved the people of your enemies," she whispered. Ryland's expression didn't change. "That's what makes us human." When the core finally exploded, the world below became light. The human fleet held position, their shields burning bright as stars. In the cockpit, Lysera closed her eyes, feeling the shockwave fade. She turned to Ryland. "You could have destroyed everything, but you didn't." Ryland smiled faintly. "That's the difference between revenge and justice." As the light faded, a new silence filled the stars. The Empress was gone, the Zalari Empire shattered, but her voice lingered in every survivor's mind, a whisper of power and fear. Ryland leaned back in his seat, his expression calm. "The galaxy will remember this day." Lysera nodded. "They'll remember that humanity came not as conquerors, but as storms that cleanse." He looked at her, his eyes soft but powerful. "And they'll remember you." Her heart trembled again, caught between fear and something far deeper. Outside, the stars shimmered like watching eyes. The war was ending, but something greater was beginning. Because wherever humanity walked, change followed, and now even the Empress's wrath had only proved one truth: that nothing in the galaxy could match the quiet strength of a Deathworlder's will. The trembling heart days turned into quiet hours among the stars. The battlefield was gone. Only drifting light and fragments of broken ships remained. The human fleet had stopped its fire, letting silence heal what sound had torn apart. Lysera sat inside the small ship beside Ryland, staring through the viewport at the pale blue curve of a new sunrise on a dying world. For the first time since she was born, she felt no order in her ears, no command in her mind, only her own breath. Ryland worked silently at the console, sending coordinates to the rescue carriers below. His hands moved with precision, but his eyes were distant, As if he was somewhere far beyond the stars, Lysera watched him, unable to stop the thought that always returned. How could something so gentle carry such power? He noticed her gaze, smiled faintly and said, "You're staring again." She looked away quickly, a blush of silver running across her cheeks. "I was thinking," she said. "About what?" He asked, still calm. "About what you are," she whispered. "A soldier who fights like a storm, but speaks like peace." Rylan leaned back, his voice soft. "We're not storms, Lysera. We're seeds. We fall, we burn, and something new grows." She looked at him, her chest tightening again. "You destroyed an empire, and you call it growth." He shook his head. "No, you destroyed it. When you chose to see instead of obey." Her throat caught, and for the first time since the war began, tears touched her eyes. The sound of them falling was quieter than any explosion. Outside, human ships began releasing relief pods, full of food, medicine, and shelters. The same hands that once fought now reached to rebuild. Lysera stared in disbelief. "You save even those who tried to kill you." Rylan nodded. "It's what keeps us different," she whispered. "Different or dangerous." He smiled again, that small calm smile that always made her heart tremble. "Sometimes both." They landed on the surface near the ruins of the palace. The air was heavy with dust, the ground warm from what was lost. Lysera stepped out first, her boots sinking into ash. Around her, Zalari civilians knelt in silence. Afraid, confused, waiting, Rylan walked forward, unarmed, his uniform torn, his face calm. He raised his hand, not to command but to greet. And the crowd slowly stood, watching the human who had conquered their fear without firing a shot later. In what remained of the royal gardens, Lysera sat beside a broken fountain. Rylan joined her, handing her a small metal tag, his identification plate, scratched and bent. "What is this?" she asked. "A memory," he said. "Every human soldier carries one. A promise to remember who we are, even when the galaxy forgets." She turned it over in her palm, the metal warm from his hand. "What will you do now?" she asked. "Rebuild," he said simply. "Teach your people what Deathworlders learned long ago. That survival is not cruelty. It's compassion sharpened by pain." A soft breeze moved through the ruins, carrying the scent of burnt flowers. Lysera looked at him. "And me?" He met her gaze. "You start again, not as a soldier, but as someone who knows the truth." She hesitated. "And if I fail?" Rylan smiled. "Then you'll stand up again. That's what we do." She felt a strange warmth rise in her chest. Not fear, not duty, something alive. She wanted to thank him, to speak, but no words felt strong enough. So she only placed her hand over his, and for a long moment they sat in silence. Around them, the sky cleared, the clouds parting to show the stars. Endless, patient, watching. Far above, the human flagship sent one last message to the surface. "Operation concluded, survivors secured, awaiting Captain Rylan's signal." Rylan looked up, his reflection shining in Lysera's eyes. He whispered, "It's time to go." Lysera's heart tightened. "Will I see you again?" He paused, then said quietly, "You already do. Every time you find calm inside chaos, that's where we live." When he boarded the shuttle, the air hummed softly. The light wrapped around him. Lysera stood alone, watching the ship rise into the dawn. It vanished among the clouds, leaving trails of silver behind. She touched the metal tag on her chest and whispered his name. A small smile touched her lips, the same calm smile she once feared. And in that moment, she understood. The galaxy would never fear humanity just for their strength. It would fear them for their hearts, unbroken, unyielding, and forever human.